So just to recap what we've been doing all week, we first started off by doing a number of different methods in order to multiply two binomials. One of them was FOIL, first, outside, inside, last. Another one was like a box method, and basically it did the same thing. One way or another, you have 4 multiplications to do, and then 1 simplification. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then on the diagonal, 1 simplification. So we have the n squared, the plus 6n, the plus 5. Now, the task today is, if I give you this, can you get an answer of this? Can you do this whole thing backwards? Okay. So using this method, if I start off with n squared, plus 6n plus 5, what you're going to do, you would plug the n squared into here, and the 5 into here, just as they appeared here and here. However, if you're starting with 6n, you don't know to fill these two squares with 5n and 1n. The question becomes, how do you know how to take this and break it up into two numbers that add up to this? Okay? And that's what you did yesterday. What two numbers multiply to, really it's going to be the product of these two numbers, and then they add up to this. So 5 and 1, and that's how you get the two numbers here. 1n, 5n, and from here we factor what's the GCF of n squared and n? N. What's the GCF of 5n and 5? 5. And we're seeing we're just getting this answer here. Same thing up here, what's the GCF of these two? And what's the GCF of 1 and 5? Well, if all else fails, 1 always goes into every number. And then you can also check, make sure that these two multiply to here. So 1 times n is 1n, 1 times 5 is 5. And that's how you're going to work this backwards in order to factor the trinomial. So that's why we used this yesterday. It's to help you get those two missing squares. So this is using the box method. Just doing the reverse of everything we already know. Just if you want to use a different method, it does work. Common mistakes before we get started though. A lot of people say whatever's here goes in front, which is not true. The number here is actually the product of these two numbers, the one in front and in back. So in this case, 1 times 5 happens to be 5, but later on, if this was a 2, it would be 10 and 6. So it's really the first and the last. And some people say, like, well, if the first number is A, the second number is B, the third number is C, on top is the attic, AC, and on the bottom is the basement, B, if that helps you remember. But you do need A and A times C on top, not just here. So to start off, all the A values will be 1. So here's your work. Right? For all of these, A is equal to 1. So it's going to seem like, okay, what two numbers multiply to 5 and add to 6? But really, it's what two numbers multiply to 1 times 5 and add to 6. And we'll get to some much bigger trinomials next week. Okay. So that's where we're starting. So let me pass this out. We'll do a few together. the first one we've already done. What two numbers multiply to 1 times 5 and add to the basement be 6? And we came up with 1 and 5. Okay. So then you go through, do the factoring, find out what the two binomials are. And you can always check your answer just by working backwards and multiplying back together. If you multiply your answer together, you should get what you started with. And that's going to be it. These will be a little bit easier, but I don't want you to think that these two numbers right here are always going to be the two numbers down here. For today, they will be. You'll notice the two numbers you get as your answer will happen to be the same two numbers down here. That's only because none of our trinomials have anything other than 1 in the front. So unfortunately, we need to start here, and some people assume that, well, it's always just going to be those two numbers and that's it, and all this stuff is unnecessary. Okay, it's just temporary. As soon as we have bigger problems, you'll definitely have to do all this work every time, but you will notice it's a little bit easier when there's no number in front. Okay. A majority of the problems will not be this easy, so we'll be careful. Would you like to do some more, or is that good enough? What do you think? 1 or 2 more, or you guys ready? 2 more. Okay. 2 more? Okay. So let's pick something from the middle here. You'll notice just like on the worksheet, the front was all positive. Here, these are all mostly positive, and then they become negatives and stuff. So let's go to which one? Something from the middle?
Either 9 or 13.
13 sounds good. Alright, so I'm doing all the steps, showing everything. Make like a tic-tac-toe. I know that the first term always goes in the middle. Last term always goes in the last square. But this, I have to break up for both these squares. So what numbers add up to 14? That will work. So X marks the spot. What two numbers multiply to 48 and add to 14? You get 6t and 8t. Technically, if we put the variables in, this is t squared and this is t. So they multiply to 48t, right? Because you multiply a and c together. Okay. So yeah, 8t, 6t. It does not matter what order these go in. Order is not important. You can switch these two. And then go ahead and factor. What's the GCF of the first row? They both have a t. What's the GCF of the second row? 6 goes into both. Positive. What's the GCF of the column? First column, t once again, and then t times t is t squared. And what's the GCF of the last column? 8 goes into both. And of course, 8 times t is 8t. 8 times 6 is 48. So those are your two binomials. T plus 6, t plus 8. And if we really wanted to check, we could FOIL those together and it should equal our answer. So just think of everything we've done and we're reversing it. Go back to here. T plus 6, t plus 8. Looks like that's t. The 13 should be t. You go over here and 13 is t. One more maybe from the last column. Only thing different is that they have two sets of variables, so any one particular here. So go to 19. So middle is always beginning. N over b squared. Okay. Average and basement. What multiplies to 100 b squared a squared? And adds to negative 29ab. So variables first. To multiply to a squared b squared, we're going to need an ab here and an ab here. Those two will multiply to the variables, and ab plus ab will add to something ab. So the variables are pretty straightforward. But the numbers you have to come up with. What? Close. What multiplies to 100 adds to negative 29? Yeah, so we got negative 25 and negative 4. So the signs are important, and it does change the answer without them. So in any order, negative 25ab and negative 4ab. And the rest is just factoring. A goes into both. That's the only thing these two have in common. A. On the bottom, 4 goes into both numbers. I'm going to take out a 4. But both of these have a b. I've got to take out a b as well. Same process above. This column, both of them only have an a in common. And a times a is a squared, so that checks out. And then, but these, 25 and 100, 25 goes into both. And they both have a b in common. Okay. So does this look good? Is this fun? Almost. Just remember, this has to multiply to negative 25. So right now I have a times 25a, a times 25b. So I do need a negative here. But now, well, negative 25 times 4 doesn't equal positive 100, so I need a negative here as well. Okay. So we got a minus 4b, a minus 25b. So if you get used to doing this, right now, the nice thing is that everything we do next week will be this easy. But if right now you're saying, well, this is too long, can I just do this? Do I really have to write that out? Your goal is to do as least amount of writing possible, because you just want to be done today and right now and only right now. You'll find out next week that attitude and approach, when you start trying to bring up your work and I'm checking your answers, I'm going to keep handing it back to you over and over until you just really start doing all of this. So your goal is to be able to do this correctly, not to write down anything and say, look, I'm done. Because you know I'll hand it back to you and say, keep going. And then I'll sign Khan Academy. And I'm not going to let you finish until you do it correctly. So try to let go of the, let me find the fastest possible way to do this, and just do it all the way through every time and get it right the first time through. Okay? And we saw in Khan Academy also that it's starting to give the option that if you do the first one right, you're finished. Or the first 2 right. Instead of doing all 5 in a row, if you get the first 2 correct, then you're done. Because we noticed that some people they start off by just guessing and not showing any work, and then they get serious, and then they have to do all this extra work, sometimes like 20, 30 minutes. If they would have just slowed down from the very beginning, done the very first two correct, showing all the work, they would have been done in 5 minutes. Try not to let this impatience affect you negatively. Just slow down, do it right from the beginning, so life will be easier. It'll be done faster. Okay. Leave you with that, and we get out at 1:44, I believe. So we got like ample time. We got about a minute per problem. We'll get you finished. So let's go ahead and work at that pace, and we'll be done.